to put them right in the soil where you want your plants to grow and leave them there until they are mature. Then the other is to start seeds in other pots that you're going to let grow in the pots, perhaps indoors, until they're of a size that you can transplant them into garden. But the lesson we're going to review right now is that of direct sowing, planting seeds right in the garden where you want them to grow. The seeds that you want to direct sow, as opposed to start in pots, are either the large seeds for plants like green beans or peas, or seeds of root vegetables. Root vegetables don't like to be transplanted. Obviously, you're going to eat the root, so you don't want to disturb the root once it starts growing. So what I'm going to plant today are some seeds for cucumbers, and then also some seeds for carrots, our favorite root vegetable. Once we have our soil prepared, the next thing that we need to do is make a furrow for the seeds. And I like to do it with a pointed stake. That way I have a nice long reach and I don't have to bend too far. I'm going to make the furrow for the cucumbers along the trellis because the cucumbers are a vining plant and they'll climb up this trellis. The cucumber seeds are one of the larger seeds. So I'm making a furrow that is about an inch deep, and I will plant the cucumber seeds there. But as long as I have my furrow making stick in my hand right now, I'm also going to go ahead and make the furrows for the carrots. The carrot seeds are much smaller, and I'm going to plant them in rows going the perpendicular direction to those cucumbers because in my raised bed I like to get as much growing in the small space that I have as possible. But this will work also if you're growing directly in the ground. So I'm making my furrow about ½ an inch deep for the carrot seeds. I'm going to space these rows about 8 inches apart. That's going to give me, in this particular 3 by 5 area, about 4 rows of carrots and a nice row of cucumbers. Get these gloves off so that I can manage to hang on to those seeds since they're relatively small. First, the cucumber seeds. Pour those into my hand, and I'm going to check on the back of the seed packet so that I confirm the depth and the spacing for these seeds. These seeds need to be planted about 3/4 of an inch deep, and when the plants come up, I'm going to thin them to be 12 inches apart. But in the meantime, when I sow them, because I'm not sure which seeds will germinate, I'm going to sow more seeds than I need. So I'm going to sow a seed about every 3 inches, and then hopefully enough will come up that I can then thin them so that the plants that remain in the garden are going to be about 12 inches apart. One seed every 3 inches along this whole row. Cucumbers and beans and squash and peas are nice big seeds, easy to handle, which makes them actually a really good candidate for working with children if you want to get kids involved in the garden. Easy for those kids to manipulate. The extra seeds I'm not using, I'll put back in the seed packet. And this particular seed packet has a nice Ziploc feature, so I can use those again later. Next will be the carrots, a much smaller seed. Again, looking at the back of the seed packet, these only want to be planted about 1/8 of an inch deep. My little furrows are a little bit deeper than 1/8 of an inch, so in a minute I'm going to show you what we're going to do to compensate for that. Again, putting the seeds in my hand. And these are small seeds, so they're a little bit difficult to place individually. So what we're going to do is just try to sprinkle them evenly along each row, and then as they germinate we will thin them, that is, pull out the ones that we don't want, so that they are about 2 inches apart. Each carrot should be 2 inches apart. So just sowing these evenly, as even as we can by sprinkling them along the row. And there's our first row done. We'll do our second row, and then we're going to cover up these rows so that I can show you how to make sure that you are getting your plants planted at the right depth, even though your little furrows might be a bit deeper than the recommended planting depth. There we go. So the way that I like to go ahead and assure that these things are planted at the right depth is I cover them with potting soil. So rather than taking the existing garden soil and knocking it over those seeds, I like to take the potting soil and sprinkling it on top for a couple of reasons. That way I can control how much soil is on top of that seed, and also potting soil is generally a very fine texture, which makes it much easier for those seeds to poke their little growth leaves through that first layer of soil. They're not going to encounter any dirt clods because I'm using a very fine potting soil as the seed cover. So here we go. For the carrots, we're only putting 1/8 of an inch of soil over those seeds. The other nice thing about using the potting soil is it's usually a different color than the soil in your beds, and so it's easy to see where the rows of your seeds are. Now for the cucumbers, we're going to put 3/4 of an inch down. So I'm going to put a much larger handful of potting soil on top of the cucumber seeds. Right now I'm just sprinkling the soil on top, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to pat that down because I don't want to have any air pockets. I want the soil to be in direct contact with that seed. So we're just going to do a little patting of these rows. And we're finished. We've just planted some cucumbers and some carrots. Our last step will be to water these in with a nice fine spray so that we don't wash the seeds away from where we planted. And we'll check our seed packets to figure out how long it's going to take for these to germinate. And in the case of the cucumbers, we should start to see these germinating in about 5 to 7 days. The carrots take a bit longer. So we'll keep these moist. That's the main thing that contributes to seed failure, is not keeping the seeds moist. So be sure that you're watering, if it's warm, even twice a day. Keep the seeds moist, and in a few days, you should see baby plants.